Good evening and welcome to the May 15th, 2019 legislative session of the Town Board. I'll officially call this meeting to order. I'll ask that you please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Cole. Here. LaFountain.
Here.
Metzler. Here. Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Here. Okay, before we get into our public hearing, I'm going to take a couple of items out of order, a couple of short items out of order. And I'll first recognize Marie Cinti and Jim Costello, if they'd please come to the podium.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to present this evening. My name is Marie Cinti. I'm the president of Penfield Rotary Club, and I'm here with Jim Costello from the town of Penfield to let you know about the annual charity golf tournament. Our third tournament host, John Hanratty of the Kiwanis, could not be here this evening, but he is extremely involved and sends his regrets. This year's tournament is going to be held on Monday, June 17th at the newly remodeled Shadow Lake Golf Club. Tournament chairs are John Trahey, Tony LaFountain, and me, and I. With the Rotary, Kiwanis, and volunteers from the town of Penfield, this is truly a community-wide tournament and a community-wide effort. We know that there are lots of opportunities to play and to promote your business and support of the Penfield community through sponsorships, auction items, things like that. We also know there are a lot of golf tournaments out in the Rochester area around now, and we hope that if you play golf, you will consider joining our tournament. Proceeds from the tournament support the work that our community service organizations do throughout the year for the benefit of the Penfield community. So when you support the tournament, you are supporting things like Penfield Little League because we sponsor teams. You're supporting things like our local scouting organization, scholarships to Penfield High School students, organizations like Shepherd Home and the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf. So a lot of the things that we do with your support from the golf tournament. I hope you can see that many of the things we love about Penfield are supported by our organizations. If you want more information, you can definitely follow us through our Facebook page and you can contact us through there. Registration sponsorship forms are available on the Penfield Rotary website, penfieldrotary.org. And you can also contact Jim, right behind me, Costello at penfield.org. So lots of different ways. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Jim, thank you. We hope for another very successful event and to support all of the organizations that you support. Thank you. All right, the second item I would like to take, I'd like to recognize Miss Barbara, and if she would please come forward. For those of you that are in the audience, I see a little tray of goodies on that back table. And I will say that if you've not had one of Miss Barbara's cookies, I would advise you to grab one on the way out before they're all gone. So welcome, and I will sit up and pay attention, be my best.
I don't have my helper with me to ring the bell. Thank you, and good evening. I'm so proud and honored to come before you again for the 5th year to announce our annual pie social at Penfield's historic 1857 Dayton's Corners Schoolhouse. It will be on Sunday, June 2nd, from 2 to 4. And I would like to sing the praises of all of our dedicated teachers who have taught there for many years, some almost 20. These volunteers have worked tirelessly, offering their time, talent, and expertise to teach the students who visit Dayton's Corners School. They strive to bring the true flavor of the 1857 one-room schoolhouse to life, and I thank these ladies. Now, Supervisor LaFountain and board members, sit up straight, feet flat on the floor, hands clasped on your desk. I am pleased to tell you about another successful year at Dayton's Corners Schoolhouse Museum. This year we hosted almost 50 visiting 4th grade classes and a few various other groups, especially some adults. Those who came to Dayton's Corners were always so appreciative of what we do, what we teach, and what we offer. These visitors checked out our 3 repaired and restored windows and beautiful new sidewalk, which replaced the old pieces of crumbling slate. Truly great additions to our school. Now, of course, I am here tonight to invite everyone to our Pie Social. It's always an enjoyable, relaxing step back into history. But I'm asking our supervisor to please speak with the weatherman to have the day be in the mid-70s with no rain.
How am I doing so far?
Well,
Saving it all up.
after our backyard is a swamp, okay. Well, we need to cancel the ponies.
I'm wiping tears from Tim Masterton's face almost daily because he's trying to get fields ready and just it's a losing proposition.
It is, the poor farmers too. So after experiencing this pie social for many years now, we have again ordered more pies and cookies from Baker Street Bakery. And thank you, Penfield residents Bill and Mary Ellen Leonardo. I'm so happy people come from all around the community to enjoy the pastries and the lemonade, free pony rides for the kids, music, playground equipment, tours of the school, and informative conversations with our teachers. I would also like to thank Supervisor LaFountain, who always supports us and this historic Penfield landmark through his many efforts and superb cutting of pies at the Pie Social. We'd like to thank Town Historian Kathy Knauer for her frequent contacts with me and also help at the Pie Social. And Councilwoman and Dayton's Coroner's School Liaison, Linda Cole, and expert pie cutter, Councilman Rob Quinn. Thank you, friends. So don't forget the annual Pie Social at the Dayton's Corner School, Sunday, June 2nd, from 2 to 4. And if you actually went to Dayton's Corner Schoolhouse, which we have every year, 1 or 2 people show up and say, I have not been back here since 1962 or 63. And I said, bring your class picture if you can. Give me a copy of your class picture. We do have a wall that goes from 1880s, 90s, right straight through the 60s and so on. So
Excellent.
it's great to hear from them.
Yeah, it
So I
sure is.
appreciate the time, and we'll see you at the Pie Social.
Look forward to it, and as always, thank you as our
Absolutely.
coordinator of that wonderful facility. Thank you for all of
Love
your
it.
efforts in organizing the teachers, updating that facility. We have done so much here in the last couple of
Yes.
years to bring that and keep that to just a wonderful facility for enjoyment by every group that comes. So thank you
So
for that,
true.
Barbara.
Well, you know, they love the playground. They love the equipment there. They can go out and play softball or soccer or kickball or whatever. There's picnic tables there and a grill in case you would like to
That's
come
right.
for a family picnic.
It's all good.
Because it's a town park and you could grill your hot dogs, hamburgers, or steaks or whatever.
Very
So
good.
people are amazed exactly what is there.
Excellent.
Please
Well,
see.
thank you. We look forward to it. And thank you again for the goodies. Again, for
Absolutely.
anyone that would like to try one of those, you're in for a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great to see you. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing, and I'll ask our clerk to please read that legal.
To hear public comments on the final draft report of the Penfield 5-year Recreation and Parks Master Plan update. The legal notice was published in the Penfield Post on April 25th, 2019, posted on the town website and town clerk bulletin board. No postcards were mailed due to this being a town-wide action.
Great, thank you. And I'll ask our town attorney, Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to recognize our Recreation Director, Chris Bilo. And Chris, if you would also introduce some members of the committee that are here as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks again for this opportunity. We're lucky that we had a number of our committee members that were able to make it this evening. So we have Dave, Larry, John, Andy, Tim, and Steve, and this is just a small portion. We ended up with, there were 13 members that were on the committee, but again, a great turnout for this evening. And obviously Linda from the town board participated as well. So tonight what I'd like to do is just kind of give an overview of the update, sort of the process that the committee undertook and followed throughout this past year. Just kind of show a few highlights from each one of the sections, or the dimensions as we called them, and then answer obviously any questions that may be specific. We started this committee with, like I mentioned, we had a number of residents. We had town staff from not only the recreation department, but we also had our parks foreman, and then we also had town board representation as well. We started the committee. The first meeting actually took place almost 1 year ago today. Our first meeting was May 14th of 2018, so almost to a year to the date. Our goal at that meeting was to sort of set the agenda for the process, and our main focus was to complete the task within 1 year. We knew from a time standpoint it was important to get it completed, but yet we didn't want to rush through the process and miss anything. As I know from my standpoint, it was an important update for us to be able to get correct in regards to long-term planning. So we set that 1 year sort of benchmark. Pleased that we were able to really kind of put the final touches on this rough draft in early to mid-March, and really kind of fine-tune it the last few weeks so that it was completed in just under a year. So again, thanks to the work of the committee, we were able to do that and not really run into any snags. We met on a monthly basis, and as I get into this, I can explain a little bit more about how we had some subcommittees that actually met offline, but as a large committee, we just met on a monthly basis. That included in November when we had our community input session. The only month that we didn't have a meeting was in December. As I mentioned at the beginning, right away, what we sort of focused on was sort of how this update was going to be directed. This is the second time that we've done an internal update from a master plan. The first one, obviously being 5 years ago, was done with really an emphasis on program and program development as we were trying to reshape a number of the things that we were doing in the department from a program standpoint. This one had a little bit broader of a focus. So we identified right from the get-go what we identified as dimensions, and there were 4 of those. Really, those are the dimensions or the pieces that make up what we do from a department. That included facilities, parks, programs, and people. So those 4 components really are what are the meat and potatoes of this update. As I mentioned, we created each one of those was a subcommittee, and from there they met offline. They did their own data research, they did their own input from receiving the input from the community. So those subcommittees each sort of worked independently, and then on a monthly basis when we got back together, we compiled that information, discussed, and went over some of that information that those groups were coming back with. From a gathering standpoint, in October, we started and we put out our community input survey. That survey was done electronically. We utilized SurveyMonkey to distribute the survey link, and we received back just about 700 responses. It's not as many as we would have liked to have had, but considering that the previous survey, we had around 375, at least we knew we were reaching more people. And we got a pretty good consensus in regards to what the residents were wanting to at least get across for this update. So that was done in October. The end of November, we held a community input session night where anybody in the community was welcome to come in. It's held at the community center. We had areas in the community room for each one of those dimensions that if people had something specific that they wanted to target, whether it was for parks or facilities, they could talk directly to that subcommittee and get their information shared. If they wanted to talk to all 4, they were welcome to do so. So from that input session, we were able to gather quite a bit of feedback as well. And then also we were able to collect electronic feedback from people. We had a link on the website where people were able to submit electronically their input, and they were able to send, again, whether it was specific to one of those dimensions or just in general, and then we tried to funnel that information to that subcommittee. So those were really the way that we collected our data. Obviously, the subcommittees and the committee members received quite a bit of data or input as well, just on their own from residents or people that knew that they were participating in this process. So what I'll do now is just briefly go over each one of the dimensions. Each one of them had a narrative to it, and each one of them had at least one. Some of the dimensions had multiple recommendations. I won't go over each one of them. I'll just highlight a few from each. Facilities was probably one of our most aggressive in regards to what we looked at. And from a facility subcommittee, really, we looked at a number of things, one being our current community center and the usage of that. And you'll see in the report, there is a usage report data sheet that just sort of gives some general information about how much the facility is used for recreation programs. And again, we're just identifying space-wise, just recreation space. You know, when you factor in that facility, which is around about 43,000 square feet, the community center, for the community center, recreation utilizes about right around 8,000 of that for programming space. So just as a sort of breakdown as to how that size or allocation breaks out. So they completed that. We also completed a sort of a benchmarking tool of municipal facilities in the area, just to get an idea of what other communities have, what their costs were, what amenities are featured in those facilities. So that's also included in the update. Obviously, from a recommendation standpoint, the way that the Recreation Department is currently offering its programs, we knew that facility was going to be one of the key components moving forward in this next 5 years. So our recommendation through the subcommittee was that the town take a serious look, you know, as quickly as possible, if not immediately, into what type of facility can and should be supported in Penfield, whether that's the current community center being expanded, whether that's looking off-site to a new location, whether that's you know, finding another facility and maybe piggybacking, but just something to have a plan put together from a town standpoint, and something that I'll say is much more in depth than what obviously this master plan. This was just a component, and we just knew going in that this was just going to be sort of one of the pieces to this. We did not get specific in this master plan as to the things from a facility of, you know, ideal type of amenities or features. It was just that this has been identified from a facility standpoint, that what the current community center is needs to be long-term in the next 5 years really sort of focused on. So I think that was probably the most clear in regards to all of the different dimensions. You know, as they were going through and looking at the number of, the amount of space in the program offerings that the department's doing, you know, right now in that space, in 2018, there was just over 1,150 programs that were provided. And again, in less than 8,000 square foot of space in order to provide programs, several of which obviously are not ideal for a number of programs. The next dimension was parks. This is probably the most expansive. Similar to the last update, the Parks Subcommittee, what they did is they again went in and did an inventory of our current parks, took a look at what features are there. With the last master plan update, there were a number of recommendations specific to each park that have been made. So they took a look at that. They made recommendations site-specific. So if there was a specific recommendation for, say, Harris Whalen, they've identified that. The Parks Subcommittee also sort of put together a broader, non-specific to a park, a number of goals or recommendations. One of the ones I wanted to highlight was, and this is sort of a continuation, but just more, I'd say, on an expansive level, from an evaluation of our existing athletic fields, the option of retrofitting our current fields, and the available or possible addition of additional field space. Would like to look into, the recommendation was to look into opportunity to add an enclosed lodge at one of our current park or properties. Obviously, for those of you that are aware, the two enclosed lodges that we have between Harris Whalen and Dolomite, those close up and fill up rather quickly when we start the year, reservation process. So one of the recommendations was look into having an enclosed lodge in one of our other properties. The People Subcommittee had a sort of more of a crossover with our Program Subcommittee, but they did provide their own data, and they shared some similar data, but the subcommittee detailed some of our current statistical data for our various age groups that are registering for our programs, and all that information comes directly out of our registration system. One of the highlights from this group was that our two largest enrollment demographics were actually our youth and our seniors, which isn't too much of a surprise, which sort of led to the recommendation similar in our program section for a focus on that 20 to 39-year-old age group. We've identified that as not only our people, but in our program section, as really an area of focus for where we have the least amount of activity and enrollment. So moving forward, that's going to be an area of emphasis from a staff standpoint. The program subcommittee focused on all of the programs that we offer and provide through the department, as well as our special events. A lot of the information from the program subcommittee actually came from that input session, as well as the survey. And according to that survey, 93% of the respondents were aware of the recreation opportunities provided by the town, and 91% of those people mentioned that they participate in programs, or 92% mentioned that they participate or utilize our parks. So that's obviously very high usage. Family programs were an area of emphasis since our last one, and we've done a great job in capturing that, and that was again noted in our comment section of the input, or the community input. And then the top three areas of interest based on the survey results, which have translated over into our staff focusing more on these as we begin our programming for each one of our seasons, included health and wellness, performing arts, and just general education programs. The main recommendation from this group, similar to the previous, is to sort of focus on that young adult population, that 20 to 39-year-old age group that we've identified through our data as being the area that we really need to key in on. Obviously not shying away from our other areas that we're currently stronger in regards to our youth and our senior programs. So each one of those dimensions are, again, explained in greater detail within the plan. Several of them have a number of recommendations. Again, I think that the subcommittees did a great job of really staying focused to their piece versus getting too broad. And that really allowed us to be able to, when we met as a large group, really sort of put all the pieces together and it all worked, versus trying to make everybody's fit into something that overlapped. We did reach out, and there's a number of other pieces or parts that are in this plan that sort of added some value. Like I mentioned, we did the facilities benchmark. We did the usage of the community center. We reached out to the school district. We did an audit of their facilities and their field information, which the town utilizes. We reached out to a number of what we've identified as community stakeholder groups, and we've asked them to update their information similar to what we did previously, so we can see any growth or decline in any of those stakeholder groups. And several of those obviously have what I would say a direct line back to the town, whether it's field requirements or gym space or just program space usage. Also obviously included in there are town park maps, and then the information that was collected from the community survey. Again, it was from my standpoint, for being the second one that we've completed, it was a great, I'll say, venture. What I will say is I think that the one that we did 5 years ago was fantastic from a town standpoint and from a department standpoint, providing us with sort of a direction. I think this one has even more value, and I feel from from a committee standpoint that there was even more work that was put into this one. I'm excited for the next 5 years to see how this plays out because, again, that previous one really served as a valuable tool. I know sometimes these get overlooked or they just looked at as a resource to, to be used for applications for grants, et cetera. But really, this provided us previously with a real strong direction as to where we were supposed to go. And I feel even stronger about this one that we completed. And the committee was just a gem to work with. So that's what I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that overview. Again, thank you to the committee, the entire committee, and certainly those that are here today. Thank you very much for all that effort. Board, I'll ask, we've had an opportunity now to have this in our hands for about a month or pretty close to a month, and would ask any questions of Chris or the team that worked on this.
Chris, I do have a question for you. And first of all, thank you very much for all the effort that you and the team have put into this. Having been on a few of these recreation updates in the past, I know that it's a lot of hard work, certainly a lot of time out of the building, taking a walk around the facilities and fields, better acquainting oneself with what the community does have to offer. So the question I have, taking facility aside for just a moment, and when I say facility, I'm bricks and mortar facilities, not necessarily fields. When going through your process with the committee and when sort of putting together the draft report, is there a list of priorities or sort of a few action items that when this becomes final that you and your team can then start implementing sooner rather than later, whether it's a program that you've seen work successfully at other neighboring towns that maybe can be value here, or if it's a different kind of partnership with a different community organization, or if it's maybe looking at our current parks and maybe restriping in a certain way, but anything immediate that sort of came out that you think in the near term, maybe 2 to 3 years, warrants a deeper dive or a prioritization?
Well, obviously, like I said, from a program standpoint, I really think and we've already started. We started it when we began our winter programming, sort of focusing our efforts on that, again, what I'll say is that younger adult age group. Mm-hmm. So from an internal standpoint, even though this is still in the draft stage, that was obviously a light bulb went out for us that this is an area that's underserved. So we've already sort of addressed that issue, and we're going to look to continue to do that as we program through, we're in the summer scheduling now as we go into the fall and then next year. So I'd say easily that's one. Probably the other things that for myself, and I don't want to speak for Tim, but from a park standpoint, there's a number of things that we do on an annual basis that sort of would tie back to something that we can pull out of this master plan. Things like the reallocation of how we have field space currently set up. The way, I'll use this facility as an example, the way that the fields are aligned for soccer, we know is an issue with seasons when we have weather the way that we've had for the spring. So if there's a way for us to be able to change or reallocate some of those fields to a Rothfuss where maybe we can move fields in a different way or in a different shape or move a different sport onto it, we might be able to clear up some of the space from Veterans Memorial and allow us to have access in wetter season. So those would probably be the two. Obviously, again, not to speak for Tim, but there's a number of things in the park section that I would say as the year goes on, they can look at this and say, okay, from a playground standpoint, we know that the playground at Rothfuss, the one up front, needs to be identified for a change. So that needs to be upgraded, and that's what you'll see as you look through the site-specific recommendations for some of those parks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Other questions, comments, board?
Chris, just real quick, as Councilman Quinn said, I'd like to thank you and the town staff and certainly the residents that served on this committee for creating this document moving forward. There was another committee that spent a lot of time working on the Shadow Pines property. I know you attended many of those meetings, and some of the members are here today. And I just wanted to touch base with you on what that committee did, as you know, and the report that was recommended or submitted to the town board a couple weeks ago. I was the liaison to the committee, and on page 14 of the draft document in front of me of the Recreation and Parks Master Plan, it does give a quick little description of what the Shadow Pines Land Use Committee was doing. But obviously, that was kind of written before the report actually got submitted to the town board.
Yep.
And as you look at page 17, you can see where you give a description and some of the things going on and recommendations per all the town parks. But Shadow Pines is not included in this document. And I realize that we're not really classifying the Shadow Pines property as necessarily a park. But nonetheless, as we all know, it does have a tremendous amount of active and passive recreation occurring on the property right now with hiking, walking, running, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing. And the recommendation by the resident committee to the town board was to continue that use and to look at some other potential uses and maybe some type of a shelter or a lodge, you know, on the property, and potentially some other non-traditional recreation activities that the town will look at as the property, you know, in the future use of the property. And so what I'm getting at is there the possibility, or my recommendation would be to just kind of fill in the narrative a little bit in this draft document of what the Shadow Pines Committee's recommendation was, and include that a little bit here, you know, on page 17 with the descriptions of all the other properties, and just kind of incorporate it a little bit more into this document than what the description is as I see it today.
Yeah, we mean, it's obviously, being in draft form, we can make those changes. Just to speak to why it's included the way it is, when we started this in May of last year, we actually pushed our start time off a little bit, trying to wait to see what the process was going to be for Shadow Pines, knowing that it was going to obviously have a direct correlation to what we're doing here. But as time went on, one thing I did not want to do is I did not want to wait too long in the process. So by starting when we did and getting especially, you know, this section completed, at that point, Shadow Pines, that the Land Use Committee had not yet made those recommendations. And again, not to slow down our process, we just went with what I'll say is a more generic or simple statement to say, this is what's going on that's specific to Shadow Pines, obviously knowing that that piece of property is now part of the town's responsibility. I will say the nice thing for myself was serving or sitting on that committee was being able to have a crossover. There were a number of the sessions and as well the comp plan where I attended those meetings and able to give some input, not only from a process standpoint of where we stood with the master plan update, but also just in general for what the department is doing and the types of programs and services, et cetera, we're providing. So I think that gave the Shadow Pines group some sort of direction as some of those recommendations. So if we want to add, you know, what the recommendations was from, you know, the Shadow Pines Committee into this, that's an easy enough thing for us to be able to do.
Yeah, I thank you for that, and certainly your participation was greatly appreciated, and the knowledge and information that you provided to the committee was, you know, of great value in helping coordinate what was going on in the town as far as recreation opportunities, and different facilities have different recreation capabilities to them. And certainly I was in no way being critical in my earlier statement of what your committee was doing with this document, realizing that you guys had to keep moving ahead, and the Shadow Pines report is pretty recent. And so it looks like we can, you know, add some level of narrative or summary description, certainly a capability of someone to, you know, download the Shadow Pines recommendations, so forth, and just kind of incorporate it and merge it into this greater document.
Yeah, we can easily put a bullet item in here for it and just list out. Yeah.
Great. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Board, other comments at this time?
Chris, can you just give us kind of a snapshot of the community input portion, not the survey, but when you gave residents the opportunity to provide input, maybe through those 4 categories, those 4 dynamics, as to what was you were hearing and how that played out in the
Sure.
the draft?
I wouldn't be telling you the truth if I say I wasn't disappointed with that turnout. I think because of the conversations that we hear on, I mean, sometimes on a daily basis in regards to, what residents would like to see, whether it's programs or in a park or facilities. We really reached out to people to try to get the word out that was happening, between putting it on the websites and doing Facebook posts. And I know the committee members sent it out to their own personal distribution lists, and we reached out to those community stakeholders, and we said, forward this on to your constituents, let them know, if they have input that they'd like to get out there. So I can tell you on my own, I had one person that sent me an email back and said, I sent it to 600 of the people that are in my address book. So we didn't get a huge response. I will say, obviously because, Andy, similar to what you were just saying, because of the timing which was obviously done intentionally, running in conjunction with Shadow Pines, we got a number of people that came in with very specific questions to Shadow Pines, which is great. We were able to take that information and bring it right to the Shadow Pines Committee, say this is what we were able to capture. I'd say probably the other area that we really had the most focus on from an input was in the facility area. And those were people coming in asking for, like to see more gym time available for things like pickleball, or we'd like to have more indoor space available for, extra program space. So those were probably the 2 main, I'll say, feedback pieces that we got, was between parks and really specifically to Shadow Pines, and then from facilities. The people portion and the program portion had some people filter through, but it wasn't like, people were in a line saying, we'd like to see this program offered, we'd like to see this program offered. Would love to have had that response, but because we didn't, we took the information that we got and sort of used that as best we could.
Thank you.
Okay. Board, other questions or comments before we open it up to the audience?
Oh, just a quick comment, because I've been on one of these Parks and Rec master plans for different times, and I agree with Chris, the way it's done internally with the residents and so on, I think it's very productive and well done, and I commend Chris for his leadership in keeping us together and coordinating all these different subcommittees that we were on and so on. And everybody in the audience that participated in the master plan, I thank you for your commitment to this.
Thanks, Linda.
All right, I'll ask our clerk, did anyone sign up to speak to this particular item?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience, including those committee members, that would like to address the board on this particular item? Bob?
Good evening. Robert Peterson, 1931 Clark, and I appreciate all the work you've done, Chris, and being at all the meetings of our Shadow Pines Land Use Committee, and we worked together, and you were very helpful in informing our committee members. And I want to say that the group, really nice job on the master plan, and it's a lot prettier than the report the Shadow Pines Land Use Committee turned in, but I'm a little jealous. And Andy, you said most of what I wanted to say for coming here. Yeah, I think Shadow Pines should be included in the master plan. And specifically, I thought the chart on page 22 should show it available for trails and whatever else was recommended. And the map on page 79, I thought Shadow Pines could be shaded light green instead of yellow, just land-owned property. I think it ought to be shown as recreational type, similar to Sherwood Fields. And those are the specifics I would say. I think since it's going to be in effect for the next 5 years, I'm sure we're going to see trails and possibly fields, athletic fields on Shadow Pines before that 5 years is out. So I think it ought to be in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else that would like? Yes, Tim Murphy.
Good evening, Board, Chris, and committee. I'm Tim Murphy, 48 Corral Drive. Excuse me, I'll use my glasses and read from my notes here. First, I want to commend you. I know how much effort goes into these plans. I did go through both the 2012 and 2019 draft plans, and I had a couple of suggestions and questions. So first and foremost, the word recommendation is used very, very often. And I assume that means that it's pointing to some type of action, but it's not definitive. It doesn't say objective or goal or next step, but just in terms of, what are we going to do, as opposed to just a soft recommendation. And I think that's what Councilman Quinn said too, priorities, calling out the things that we think we actually want to do, the things we want to resource. I think we could do a little bit better job with that instead of just, many, many references to recommendations. Also, in terms of continuity, I looked at the 2012 plan, and I have a couple of pages from that here with me tonight. And then I was looking for those same statements or recommendations in the 2019 draft. And I didn't see them. So, again, you want things to kind of glue together and show some continuity. So on page 10 of the 2012 master plan, there's item number 3, formation of community user focus group. And I won't read it all to you, but the last sentence is, community input is not only needed, but essential. So again, community user focus group, I looked for that in this plan, and I didn't see anything that referenced it. I mean, again, where I'm kind of going with this. We used to have the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, people that met regularly to provide input and assist the groups, the Parks and Rec Board. And again, so I don't see that being called out in this new draft plan. It happened to support, obviously, this effort, but an ongoing committee. There's no reference other than the Trails Committee on the town's website. And I would strongly advocate, you call it out. I don't care what you could name it, but there's a need for community input. And that should be a priority. That's just my opinion. And number 4, and again, in the 2012, master plan, enhancement and/or acquisition of parks, recreation, and open space sites. And part of the sentence is in there, an added emphasis should be on future acquisition of facilities and park land. So again, we've had a lot of work done on the Shadow Pines effort. And we've had a lot of work on the open space. But kind of gluing it all together and having something that, kind of looks like a forward-looking plan. And I'd also contend that there's plenty of room for conversation regarding having a zoning category to protect these assets. There's been a lot of conversation about, how did the Shadow Pines, plan actually happen? And many of us that were on the committee, we talked about it and said, well, geez, if we would have turned the recreation sanctuary designation into something that was a zoning category, it would have helped with the town's position and John Odenbach's plan or dream or vision to eventually turn it over to the town and make it a park. So again, all of that needs to come together. That not just in the Parks and Rec comprehensive plan, obviously, but I think it needs to call it out, and certainly the comprehensive master plan should talk about, our parks, our land, our open space. We should consider having a zoning category for it. And also,
That's something that the Comp Plan Committee is looking at and will be making recommendations on.
Great, Tony. And just a fine point on that, Bob mentioned it too. If you look on the map, it refers to the Shadow Pines property as town land, as well as property that's right across from my house too, and by Beacon Hills, town land. But there's no definition of what town land is. If I ask my neighbors, they call it Forever Wild because it's landlocked. But again, I think it deserves something more because, as Bob referenced it too, he said it should be colored green. We should consider it a park asset or a green space or open space or whatever we decide to call it. But all of that kind of needs to come together in the conversation. And we know the words are important. Calling it a park has its own set of difficult connotations. You know, not a lot of people are familiar with the alienation process. But again, we as a town, I think, you know, let's take a couple steps forward and talk about that. And I'd like to see it in this plan. On page 87, there's a map of the Rothfuss Park. So I know this because, again, I was the chairperson of the Rothfuss Committee. We showed on the original master plan, and I have a copy of it here, that there was a 10,000-foot park center and a 50,000-foot addition community center. So I don't see that on the current map, and I didn't see it anywhere in the narratives. I mean, we talked about this, you know, needing space, indoor space, needing senior space. You know, we talked about this years ago, and it went into the thinking and the planning around Rothfuss Park. So I'd be glad to share the map with you. Again, I have, you know, but if you go back to the original plan, I think you pull it out, you'll see on there that there's the references to something that we knew we were going to need in the future and we're talking about now. And also kind of related to that, I mean, I don't see any financials at all in the plan. Nothing about, you know, how we've done in years past in terms of income. You know, how does that relate to the expenditures around programming and facilities? So there's nothing. There's no financials. I mean, I remember we used to have conversations around, you know, the swimming lessons was a big revenue generator and supported a lot of other programming. And that's important conversation. So, you know, what programs stand on their own 2 feet and what ones needs to be subsidized? And again, I would contend when we look at this holistically, the financials are a huge part of this. And I don't see any references in here to any of that. No forecast for the multi-purpose facility that's referenced and talked about. You know, how big might it be? An estimate on square footage per square foot cost, all of that, I think, you know, deserves part of the conversation. If we're all convening to do this kind of work, you know, let's take it the next step and at least get some kind of estimates included. Okay, I think I made all my points. And again, I hope this isn't taken as critical. Again, you know, I'm very proud of the facilities and the programs that our town has. I enjoy them regularly. And the people that take care of them are both my friends and people that I look up to and I value. So again, you know, we've done a great job to this point, but there's some room for improvement, and those are my suggestions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim. Appreciate it. Other comments? All right. Seeing no other comments, I'll ask the board any additional questions or comments either for Chris or the committee at this time. Okay. And then seeing none, and before I close this public hearing, I'm going to, for this evening, we'll close it from a discussion standpoint, but I'm going to hold it open for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think what we'll do is through the June 5th town board meeting, first meeting in June, leave it held open so that anyone that would like to offer up any comments via email, snail mail, anything like that, have the opportunity to do that and provide any of those additional comments back to this board. So seeing no further discussion this evening on this matter, I'll declare the public hearing here closed, and we'll hold it open for comments through June 5th. Again, thank you, Chris, for the feedback and input on the plan and taking the lead to highlight that to all the committee members. Thank you for your efforts and the time that you spent on that. It was so critical. And those that spoke on the plan tonight, thank you for your input and feedback as well. All right, thank you. We'll move on with our agenda. And we'll move on to communications and announcements, and I'll recognize the clerk first.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Due to the annual assessment grievance day in the town of Penfield, Monroe County Mobile DMV office will not be available at the town hall on Tuesday, May 28th. Other municipalities host the DMV throughout the week, and a complete list of these locations are available at monroecounty.gov. If you have any questions regarding this partnering service between the county and the town of Penfield, you can call me at 340-8629. The mobile DMV will return to the Town Hall on Tuesday, June 4th at 10 a.m.
All right, thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. The town of Penfield will dedicate its Public Works Facility rain garden in memory of Richard H. Dick Vendel, Thursday, May 16th at 1 p.m. at 1607 Jackson Road. The community is welcome to join the Vendel family and town officials at the dedication ceremony. The newly named Richard H. Vendel Memorial Rain Garden was installed in 2007. It was designed by Zaretsky and Associates with engineering by Mark Valentine, town engineer. Dick Vendel, a valued town employee for nearly 30 years, was the construction manager for the innovative stormwater management project and was involved in every aspect of site preparation and installation. Rain gardens are planted areas designed to capture and manage excess rainwater runoff and melted snow. They are usually placed in low-lying areas located near an impervious surface like a parking lot or a driveway or structure. They are designed to reproduce natural water retention and filtration. Again, the ceremony will be Thursday, May 16th at 1 p.m. at the Highway Department, Jackson Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Smesley.
I have one announcement this evening, just a reminder that this Friday, May 17th, and Saturday, May 18th, is the town's annual spring drop-off event at the Department of Public Works facility off of Jackson Road for disposal of household items. A listing of what will and will not be accepted at this event is available on the town's website at www.penfield.org. Friday's hours of operation will be 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturdays will be 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you have any items that are not accepted at this event, please consider Monroe County Echo Park, a one-stop drop-off recycling facility located just south of the Rochester Airport. A hot link to the Echo Park is available on the homepage of penfield.org to learn more about all they provide. And with respect to the spring drop-off, I wanted to put in a special plug. Once again, one of my two favorite Eagle Scouts, my nephew Mitchell Krenzer, will be doing his Vacuums for Vets project. He does this on a continuing basis when he's home from college. Anyone who has any vacuums, broken vacuums, vacuum parts, hand vacs, shop vacs, they will be separated out by our DPW staff, and Mitchell will be picking them up at the end of each day. What he does, and I think he's going on probably upwards of 50 vacuums he may have donated. He takes them, cleans them, refurbishes them, fixes them, and donates them to veterans groups for veterans who are looking to get in their own independent living or who need some household items such as vacuums. So he's been doing that, and we've been helping him out by keeping those vacuums out of the landfill and into the homes of our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. The town offices will be closed on Monday, May 27th, in observance of Memorial Day. Additionally, the library will be closed from Saturday the 25th through the Monday the 27th. They'll reopen on the 28th for normal business hours. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. On Monday, May 27th, the town will hold its annual Memorial Day ceremony within Veterans Memorial Park at the Penfield Amphitheater. Beginning at 10:30 a.m., the ceremony of remembrance will include a presentation of roses, featured guest speaker Nick Stefanovich, who is the director of the Monroe County Veterans Service Agency. Individuals may reserve a rose to honor a military member who was killed in action, is currently serving, or a veteran of our nation's armed forces. If you wish to reserve a rose, please call Sabrina at Penfield Recreation at 340-8651. For all details regarding this event, please visit penfieldrec.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Skoll.
I just have one announcement that my monthly community chat is next week. It's Tuesday, May 21st from 5:30 to 7 in the new book area at the library. If you'd like to come and talk about anything. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Move on to public participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any matter? Several ways to do that. If you're here in the audience, you can address the board by coming to the podium. You can call in at 340-8771, or you can log on at penfield.org. Seeing no one at this time, there is a second opportunity towards the end of the agenda. We'll move on to additions and deletions to the agenda, and I'll recognize Councilman Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. 3 new additions to tonight's agenda, resolutions 19T-132, 133, and 134.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
And I will
to
second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Resolutions 132, 3, and 4 will be added to the agenda. We have the April 17th, 2019 minutes before us, and would entertain a motion of approval of those minutes.
I move that the minutes of April 17th be approved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on those minutes?
No.
Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Petitions. Has the town board, town attorney, or town clerk received any petitions since our last meeting? Seeing none, move on to resolution by function, starting with law and finance.
Authorization for the supervisor to execute the agreement for DocuWare.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town of Penfield has accepted DocuWare as the town-wide document management program, and Toshiba as the third-party vendor to DocuWare. Be it resolved that the town board authorizes the supervisor to execute all necessary documents after review by the town attorney.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for town supervisor to sign a professional service contract with ATIP Control Incorporated for a pond treatment program.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town of Penfield sought quotes for professional pond treatment services to obtain the necessary permits from both the United States Army Corps and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and complete various treatments for 5 ponds located in the town of Penfield. Whereas quotes were sought and ATIP Control Incorporated was the low bidder. Now further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to sign a contract with ATIP Control Incorporated for professional services not to exceed $24,450.45. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for supervisor to sign a license and hold harmless agreement to allow a fence within a storm sewer easement at 12 Shadow Vale Drive.
Moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that the town board of the town of Penfield hereby authorizes a supervisor to sign a lease and hold harmless agreement with the owners of the property at 12 Shadow Vale Drive to permit a fence to encroach into a storm sewer easement to the town located at 12 Shadow Vale Drive in the town of Penfield.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Approval of issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a CBD shop at 2118 5 Mile Line Road.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas an application has been received by the Penfield Town Board for the issuance of a conditional use permit pursuant to 250-5.10B1 of the code to allow a CBD shop at 2118 5 Mile Line Road in the Four Corners zoning district. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Penfield held a public hearing at the Penfield Town Hall on May 1st, 2019, 7 p.m., to consider the application and to hear any persons interested in the question of the issuance of this permit. Now be it resolved that the applicant's request for a conditional use permit to allow a CBD shop at 2118 5 Mile Line Road is hereby granted following conditions. For the record, Mr. Supervisor, there are 6 conditions in this resolution. All 6 are consistent with the Four Corners zoning district.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. Further discussion. See no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Approval of issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a CBD shop at 2150 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas an application was received by the Penfield Town Board for the issuance of a conditional use permit pursuant to local law number 2 of 2003 to allow a CBD shop at 2150 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road located in the business non-retail zoning district. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Penfield held a public hearing at the Penfield Town Hall on May 1st, 2019, 7 p.m., to hear all persons interested in the issuance of this conditional use permit. Be it resolved that the applicant's request for a conditional use permit to allow a CBD shop at 2150 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. And again, for the record, Mr. Supervisor, there are 5 specific conditions to this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? See no further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Budget amendment for 2019 in the library fund.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas at their monthly meetings, the library board recognized the receipt of donations received during the first quarter of 2019 in the amount of $309.78 to be used for library activities. Whereas the town board desires to have an up-to-date budget in current appropriations and revenues. Now be it resolved that the following 2019 budget amendment be approved under revenue in the amount of $309.78 and appropriations of $309.78. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? See no further discussion. Roll call vote.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Awarding a contract for the 2019 sidewalk construction program.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the Penfield Town Board funds an annual sidewalk construction program promoting pedestrian accessibility and safety, and whereas sealed proposals were sought and duly advertised for the installation of new and the repair of existing sidewalks within the town of Penfield, and whereas on April 26, 2019, the sealed proposals for the project were received, opened, and read publicly by the town clerk, and whereas the bid submitted by Hines Concrete Company was evaluated and found to be the lowest bidder for the specified improvements and has met the town's bidding requirements for this project, and now therefore be it resolved that the contract for the 2019 sidewalk construction be and is hereby is awarded to Hines Concrete on the unit price basis as submitted to the town of Penfield. And be it further resolved that the award is subject to the submission and approval of the appropriate bonds and insurance, at which time the contractor will be given the notice to proceed for this contract.
Thank you. Discussion?
I'll just note, Mr. Supervisor, that attached to the resolution are the breakdown of the different bids that were received, if anyone is interested in those.
Great. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for the town board to accept the Monroe County Community Development Block Grant for $70,500 for the year 43 Willow Pond Sidewalk Improvement Project and execute agreement.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town of Penfield is a member of the Monroe County Community Development Block Grant Urban Consortium, and whereas the town of Penfield has entered into a cooperation agreement to participate in the community development program and comply with the laws and requirements regulating the program, and whereas the town of Penfield, after consultation with the public, has identified an appropriate use of potential community development funding in the town, and whereas the town of Penfield has made application to the Monroe County Development Administration for a project that has satisfied its requirement, and whereas the Monroe County Development Administration has awarded a grant for a maximum amount of $70,500 for the year 43 Willow Pond Sidewalk Improvement Project in the town of Penfield. And whereas the town of Penfield has deemed it in the best interest of the town to accept this grant, now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Penfield accepts this grant and encourages the implementation of this project. And now therefore be it further resolved that the town of Penfield Supervisor R. LaFountain is authorized to execute an agreement with Monroe County for the project and the grant.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, just real quickly would like to point out that this community development block grant through the county is a competition with the 20 other towns throughout Monroe County, and Penfield won. We won $70,000, which I think is one of the larger amounts this town has received or has been awarded in these competitions that are held every year. So I'd like to extend a special thank you to your efforts for going out and your staff's efforts for securing the $70,000 in this grant competition, but also the efforts of our 2 county legislators, County Legislator Debbie Draw and County Legislator George Ebert, for their efforts in helping secure, and Penfield for winning the $70,000 in the grant competition. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. See no further discussion. A roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization to attend the Association of Public Historians of New York State Annual Conference.
So moved.
Second.
The town historian is a member of the Association of Public Historians of New York State. The annual conference will provide professional training and networking that will benefit the town of Penfield. So be it resolved that Kathy Knauer, the Penfield Town Historian, is authorized to attend the conference in Albany, September 9th to the 11th. Be it further resolved that funds are provided in the 2019 Town Historian budget. Expenses include registration, meals, lodging, transportation, and related expenses.
Right. Thank you. Further discussion. See no further discussion. Roll call vote.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for supervisor to sign recreation contracts.
So moved.
Second.
This authorizes the town supervisor to sign 2 recreation contracts. One's with Northeastern Production Systems, and it's all about the Independence Day event coming up on Saturday, June 29th. And Tickety Boo Creative, which is instruction for adult education with arts and crafts programs taking place this summer.
Very good. All right. Further discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, I apologize. I was at a work session. I drifted back to the work session that, yeah, the tickety-boo got me, so I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, thank you. Brings us to old business. Is there any old business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, brings us to new business, and I'll ask clerk to start with Resolution 132.
Award contract for 2019 securing of properties as needed by the authorized official.
So moved.
Second.
Whereas sealed proposals were requested for the securing of properties that may become abandoned, neglected, and/or otherwise inadequately secured by the owner thereof in accordance with the applicable secure compliance code requirements of the town of Penfield. And whereas on Friday, May 3rd, 2019, at 11 a.m. local time, a sealed proposal was received from Paul Davis and was read publicly by the town clerk. And whereas Paul Davis is the lowest responsible bidder for meeting the specifications as set forth in the bid for 2019 securing of properties. And now therefore be it resolved that the Penfield Town Board hereby awards the bid to Paul Davis. Be it further resolved that funds for said work are budgeted for in the 2019 adopted budget. Be it further resolved that the town board, or the town of Penfield, will include a 25% administrative fee for each service provided, and said fee will be charged to the property receiving the required maintenance service.
Thank you. Discussion?
No.
Seeing no discussion, roll call vote.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Award contract for 2019 property maintenance to maintain and clean up properties as needed by the authorized official.
So moved.
Second.
Who was that?
We'll go with Andy.
It was Andy. Little high voice tonight.
Whereas sealed proposals were requested for the maintenance and cleanup of properties that may become abandoned, neglected, and/or otherwise inadequately maintained by the owner thereof in accordance with the applicable property maintenance code requirements of the town of Penfield. And whereas on Friday, February 3rd, that's my birthday, so I saw the 3rd. On Friday, May 3rd, let's try this again, 2019, at 11 a.m. local time, a sealed proposal was received from Emergency Enclosures and was read publicly by the town clerk. Whereas Emergency Enclosures was the lowest responsible bidder for meeting the specifications as set forth in the bid for the 2019 property maintenance, and now therefore be it resolved that the Penfield Town Board hereby awards the bid to Emergency Enclosures. Be it further resolved that funds for said work are budgeted for in the 2019 adopted budget. Be it further resolved that the town of Penfield will include a 25% administrative fee for each service provided, and said fee will be charged to the property receiving the required maintenance service. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? So no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for insurance coverage 2019 to 2020.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas commercial insurance consultants acting as consultant to the town reviewed the proposed renewal of the town's current insurance provider, U.S. Specialty for property and liability insurance, and from a new provider, Beasley, for pollution liability insurance effective June 1st, 2019, and found the terms of the proposals to be in the best interest of the town. Now, be it resolved that the insurance quote of $141,116.27 received by USI for property and liability coverage with U.S. Specialty and the quote of $5,129.08 for pollution liability coverage with Beasley is approved for the 2019-2020 insurance year. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
This brings us to our second public participation. Again, if you're here in the audience, you can address the board by coming to the podium. You can call in at 340-8771, or you can log on at penfield.org. I see Mr. Ed Linskog, 40 Willow Pond Way, would like to address the board. Welcome, Ed.
I had to wait till you recommended the community block grant before I spoke. I want to thank you for that on behalf of the legacy community. I'm sure it's an improvement is vastly needed. The only other major problem we have is that number 25 Willow Pond Way, which is flooded, and it's been flooded since November. It's completely unusable by the residents of Legacy, and it gets very little foot traffic now from the neighborhood because it's underwater most of the time. Jim has approached the problem, but he hasn't been able to resolve it as of yet. So I think some further action needs to, from the town, to put pressure on the owners to clean it up and make it more usable.
Got it. So certainly we've had our share of rain since the fall, and as I had indicated earlier, Tim Masterton and his team have been pulling their hair out trying to get fields ready for play, and only to find that most of them, or many of them, are underwater. I'll speak with Jim, and I'm assuming Jim Costello is the one that has had some initial conversation with
That's correct. He's also talked to some of the neighbors in the area.
Okay. So I can follow up with Jim to see what progress he's made to date. It is private property, but
That's correct. Well, it appears that the original owner, which was Mark Ford, didn't do the adequate job of grading. Jim has admitted that they were a little sloppy at times, and it appears that that's contributed to the problem that's there nowadays, with some of the neighborhood being affected too because of drainage swales point in the wrong direction. 25 is actually flooding number 40 Willow Pond Way. The water that's coming off the hillside.
It's coming off and running
it's
to
collecting
the
on the
south
road.
and the east.
I did get a resident who lives near one of the ponds on the road, Dr. Neil McNabb, who moved into our building. He was supposed to show up here tonight too and also talk on the situation because he's concerned about mosquitoes.
Oh, got it.
Okay. But obviously he was doing something else and didn't make it tonight. So
Okay.
maybe you'll hear from him in the future too.
We'll look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, Ed, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the board on any matter? Okay. Seeing none and seeing no additional business to come before the board this evening, the May 15, 2019 legislative session of the town board stands adjourned at 8:16 p.m. Thank you to Penfield TV. Thank you to everyone that participated this evening. And again, thank you to those members of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Thank you. Have a great evening.